Good afternoon, Northern Europe, and welcome to this edition of News Bulletin. We're very happy to welcome you here.
Yes, good afternoon.
As always, I'm Alexandra. I work for the Belgian Google Marketing Solutions team, and I'm joined here with Oscar.
Yes, hi, my name is Oscar. I'm from the Dutch Google Marketing Solutions team, and we're both very happy to be here today.
Exactly. So what will we be covering today? So as those that are following for the last couple of weeks, we've been working with topics lately, and we are kicking off a new topic today, which will be audiences, and that's going to be the topic for this month. So we only have 2 news bulletins left until the summer vacation. Sad face. But we'll be back in September with a whole bunch of topics. And by the way, little shout out for feedback. If there's anything like topics or deep dives that you would be interested in hearing about, feel free to let us know about it because we'll be building the content pipeline right now. So today we'll kick off audiences, see at how we can identify and re-engage audience, and we'll also have a case study dedicated to it.
Yep. Exactly.
And then a couple of product updates as per usual. It's been a little bit of a quiet 2 weeks, but we have still quite interesting stuff we want to bring to you. Okay. As per usual, we'll end with some questions and hopefully answers. This is a live stream. Feel free to send through your questions on the live stream. Yes. We see them popping in. If we are the most suitable people to answer them, we will. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we'll find a way to help you along any case. All right, without any further ado, audience strategy. So basically, the way we want to approach it today is kind of give you a tool that is easy for you to discuss with your end advertiser or clients. And that tool is kind of a segmented strategy, 3-step strategy that's quite easy to discuss. So what does that 3-step strategy involve around? It's about identifying an audience, knowing how to re-engage it, and how to expand on it. The 2 points we'll be discussing today is identify and re-engage, and then next news bulletin we'll talk more about expansion of audiences. Yep. So what we want to do when it comes to identifying an audience is making sure that we are leveraging the data that you have to really spot that relevant, efficient, valuable end audience to you, and to be able to, in the next step, re-engage that audience and then build on that with that expansion. Because you see, there's a lot of guessing games going around, and we want to avoid that because in the digital era that we have right now, we have so much data. It is kind of not an excuse. We have to find a way to really, as I said, leverage the data that we can have to determine certain audiences to target. There's actually also a quote that we really like to use within Google that was said by John Wanamaker. Feel free to use it if you need to. John once said that half the money I spend on advertising is useless. The trouble is I don't know which half. See, in this day and age, that is not an excuse. This was said in the 19th century. So, John, you were still allowed to say that. But let's find a way to really make sure that we don't end up in these type of scenarios. Talking about kind of guessing games and bias scenarios, this is something I hear from a lot of advertisers. If you are active in sports, maybe I'll just target men because sports is a men game. Or I'm a gaming app, maybe I should just look at kids as a potential audience. Women are usually the homemakers. Let's see how we can target them. Or men only buy cars. See, that is kind of a guess, an intuition that you might have, but the data can also speak for itself. For example, when it comes to sports, actually, more than 60% of sporting goods that also engage with sporting content on YouTube were female. When it comes to gaming, the people that are more interested in the gaming industry and searching about that are usually over 35-year-olds. So that's not even plus 25-year-old, that's plus 35-year-olds. So still young, not that young.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So that's also from looking at our own data, but you can find these type of things in your accounts as well, which we'll get to in a minute. When it comes to the homemaking part, actually more than 40% of home goods searches on mobile last year were made by males. So see, that is, again, not a good assumption to have. Just like when it comes to the men looking for cars, actually more than 60% of auto searches on mobile, again, were made by females. So you see all these type of online online behavior analysis might be different from what you expect. So the best thing to do is just to open accounts, open data providers, and try to build those profiles and personas yourself.
Cool. And this is for the US market, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
Cool. Super cool.
Exactly. Then looking at kind of overviews of tools you can use to really build that identification and re-engaging part of the strategy. When it comes to identifying within like the AdWords sphere, a very important feature is going to be your remarketing list, your audience list, your audience manager, may it be through Google AdWords or Google Analytics. Why? Even though you might not be using those remarketing lists just yet to really bid on them, you might be able to just draw like insights and trends from it. So make sure that you always kick off and open up audience lists so they will collect cookies, because that's valuable data that's interesting for you to maybe segment in the future or use for certain types of holidays, certain type of products. So remarketing lists are going to be your first one. Then any type of integration between AdWords and Analytics is always really important or interesting as well. Why? Because you get like more of a global view and not just the paid advertising part of it. Conversions, of course, like I know it might sound obvious, but you would be surprised by the lack of attention to it sometimes. Having a proper conversion tracking in place is really interesting for you to be able to build up a funnel. What is the difference in audience between someone that converts or someone that just visits my webpage twice a week? Those are two different types of personas, right? And you might be interested in targeting them and just interacting with them in a different way. When it comes to re-engaging, Smart Display is something we've discussed for a couple of news bulletins now, but it's a good way to actually combine re-engaging and expanding. Remarketing lists, search ads, also really interesting. We'll get back in a moment. Remarketing made on display, may it be a static remarketing or dynamic remarketing, and then using the future of customer match. So that's, again, using your first-party data to leverage within your paid advertising strategy.
Customer matches, for example, email addresses.
Yeah, email addresses. There are actually now 4 different types of customer information you can input to be able to build a customer match list. So yeah, and 2 of them
several options.
We still have to formally announce. So yeah, there's a lot of things or ways you can do customer match with. When it comes to those remarketing lists, I just want to show something, and that's within an account, the audience manager, which is actually probably my favorite feature and one of the things I open up every time I get an account or I want to just draw any type of insights. So basically it's within your tools, you go to your audience manager and you have different types of lists. For this case particularly, for example, I look at the converter list because that's a highly relevant list, right? It's people that actually converted, that are actually already customers of yours. So this is a fashion brand that's active in France mostly, and they are mostly like smartwear, things you can go to work with. Okay. So I choose an all converters list, and then I go see the insights, and then I get insights about demographics, but under that, I get insights about how these groups or these type of converters are translated in terms of in-market audiences and affinity audiences on our platforms. So what we see here, for example, is that the people that have converted on that website in the past 30 days are 7.8 times more likely to also be in-market, so having a purchasing intent in outerwear than the rest of France, which is the benchmark I took here. Yeah. So that's why it's highly relevant for you to introduce those type of audiences in other display campaigns that you might have, because they have already shown their relevance in the past. So you can do that with the in-market audiences, you can do that with the affinity audiences, you can use this information to build your custom audiences. The point is, if you're looking for data to build an audience strategy, the audience manager is a great place to start. Yes. For the rest of the type of products and features that you can leverage within your identify and re-engage strategy, RLSA and remarketing in general is really interesting. Why? 96% of shoppers actually leave first visit to a website without converting. So that means that they will probably compare, they will probably come back to you, but you need to make sure that you're always present when every step of the way, because it actually takes 49% of people 2 to 4 visits to a website before they purchase something. So that's really important. For the display remarketing, specifically, it's a great way for you to re-engage your customer across all platforms with different formats of your messaging. So that's also like an integral part of just a holistic advertising strategy. And then for the customer match, what I find quite interesting here is we did a survey, like it's not a survey, research last year, where we compared market leaders with market laggers. So anyone that was outperforming the market, what type of features were they using? And consistently, market leaders were using features like customer match. And when they were outperforming their peers in sales growth 85% of the time, and outperforming their peers in gross margin by 25%. So that just shows, like, if you want to be ahead of the movement, this is a type of features that you need to also take into account in any type of advertising strategy. So I hope that's a little bit of an overview for you.
Cool.
And we have here a case of someone that also went full in on audiences.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alexandra. That was really useful. And I think, the following example, it's a spa brand called Marimex. It's a really good example of a company that used audiences to really bring their online sales to the next level. So Marimex, they sell spa equipment. So think, for example, of bathtubs or jacuzzis. And their goal was, they had seen that their business was growing rapidly in the last recent years, but they were also looking for ways to maximize online sales. So online sales was lagging a bit, and they saw that offline they were doing great. They wanted to put more of the effort online, and were looking for ways to kind of increase their sales. What they also noticed is that in the busy buying season, so in the seasonal uplifts, they noticed that there was more competitors and that there was more market share that they had to defend. So they wanted to also defend their market share in the buying seasons. So what they did is they used audiences as well. The first one they used was the remarketing list for search ads, or RLSA in short. I think RLSA is a really good example, and I think Marimex is a really good example of a company where RLSA is really useful, because RLSA is especially useful for companies that have a high investment product. So a spa equipment, so let's say if you want to buy a jacuzzi, it's quite an expensive product, right? It's an expensive that you will think about for a longer period of time. And I think RLSA, especially for those types of products where the conversion cycle is quite long and people think quite long about making the decision, they will be checking your website, and they will be comparing your website to other websites as well of competitors. And especially in that case, it's important to make that differentiation within your budgets between people that came to your website the first time, or people that are already deeper in this already quite long conversion funnel, and will probably be more interested in buying your products. So I think RLSA was a really great option for them. The second audience that they used in their approach was similar audiences. Similar audiences, you can see, is kind of an audience list that is kind of like a new group of highly potential clients that look a lot like your current website visitors in terms of characteristics. And I do think that indeed also for spa equipment might be quite a specific audience. Think about higher educated people, maybe like that have a higher income, maybe, or people that have a pool, people that have a garden, have a big garden that they can put a jacuzzi in. So similar audiences was a great way to look outside of their current audience and kind of do more prospecting, and thereby expand their audiences. And the results were really great. They increased their growth in conversions year over year with 56%, which is quite drastic. And they also managed to decrease their CPA with 8%. And I think especially the RLSA probably contributed to that, because RLSA really allows you to, within your current budget, put more significance to the people that are more likely to convert. Thereby, you waste less money, so to say, on less interesting customers. So I think that is a really great example. And I think that's that the decrease in CPA is a direct consequence of that. And finally, their revenue increased with 36%, thereby not compromising other sales channels. So this was just the online sales that increased with 36%. So it's a really great result of just using audiences. And I think it's a good example where audiences made a big difference. Absolutely. And as Jan Bonan, the online specialist, mentioned of Marimex, thanks to Google AdWords, we have successfully reached our goals in sales growth. great example of audience lists making a big change.
Absolutely. This is actually not a case you will find on Think with Google, because it's a bit more specialized since it's only about audiences. But we hope that way you also find some stuff through the news bulletin that you don't always find on the hub. But yeah, absolutely, Oscar. I think that was a pretty cool case and a pretty good conclusion quote. So I like it. On to our product updates. So the first one is not really a product update, but it's a great way to find out about product updates. And that is our upcoming Google Marketing Live event. So it's basically for our ads business. It's the biggest conference we have every year. It's taking place in California. So if you can go there, please do. I can't myself. But what I would recommend you to do is to sign up to follow the live stream of the keynote. So basically, it will take place on July 11th. We were just checking time zones, but when it comes to the majority of our region, that should be 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. for Finland, if I'm not mistaken. In any case, perfect timing for, I don't know, an after work combined pizza, beers, and product updates. That's how I would do it in any case. There's the one major keynote of 1 hour where you can sign up for, and then you find out anything that's interesting, new roadmap coming up for both our ad business, but also analytics and actually even the platform business. So everything that's DoubleClick related. The way for you to sign up is through the Inside AdWords blog. So if you just Google Inside AdWords, Google Marketing Live, or if you are hopefully already subscribed to the blog, you will have probably seen it pass through. The only thing is that you really need to sign up to be able to follow it. So I would make sure to do that. Cool. Moving on to a real product update.
I'll be watching. I'll be watching. So a real product update is the Ad Variations tool, which is a great example of how you can make small changes in AdWords with a really big impact. This feature was launched internationally in May 2018, so it's a relatively new feature, and I think it's cool to deep dive a little because it has some really cool features. What makes a good ad? So, as marketers may know, there's a lot of ways to make up an ad, to make up a text ad. There's a lot of things that you can think about in search. So you might think about the headline, the landing page that's relevant to the query, brand terms. Are you going to use non-branded or branded terms? Are you going to use sales terms such as free shipping or a percentage that's off? You want to create a sense of urgency sometimes, using call to actions, etc., etc. There's a lot to think about, and I think that the Ad Variations tool is a great way to test and to A/B test a lot of these features. And I'll show you how big of an impact this can make. So, for example, we used the search from Google Chromecast, and we used, using the Ad Variations tool, a couple of ad creatives to test how well their CTR performed. So the first one shows that we used a brand in the headline. So instead of saying Google Chromecast, they tested Chromecast from Google, and you see that the CTR is 23%. But then when you include the price in the headline, the CTR increased with 35%. Free shipping, so including that USP in the title, in the description, actually decreased the CTR with 13%, and having a call to action increases CTR again to 18%. So you see that like these really small changes can really increase or decrease your CTR. And this is just an example to illustrate how big of an effect these Ad Variations still can have on your brand.
The point is still that like each one of these ads were clicked on at some point. So the important thing is also to always have quite a broad inventory of ads. So don't think that just because, for example, the one with the price works the best, it should be the only one there. So just making sure that you have an ad that caters to everyone is also really important.
Definitely. And as I always advise advertisers, always make sure to have 3 ads per ad group. And when you see that one ad is, for example, performing the least in terms of CTR conversions, don't delete it, just change it. And make sure that you're constantly testing and ABC testing your...
That's a great way to do it, yeah.
Exactly. So, in summary of Ad Variations, what are the 3 unique selling points, or the 3
differentiators?
Differentiators, indeed. First of all, is performance, of course. As you saw before in the last slide, CTR increased with certain ad formats, so it can really drive your performance. Skill, as you will see in the next slide, it's really easy to implement in certain campaigns or even account-wide. And also transparency, because the tool gives you a really great report at the end of your tests for any metric that you are interested in, and it will give you a great overview of which ad variation works best and which does not. So how can you set it up? This is talking about the scale or the scope, as we talked about earlier. There's 3 ways in which you can use the add variation tool. You can either use it on your whole account, you can use selected campaigns, or you can also refine your scope with a filter. So for example, you could say, I don't want to use anymore the words, like everywhere in my account where I use the word sale, I want to change the word sale for the word promotion, and I want to check what the uplift will be in, for example, CTR. So you can really use like filter based on specific words throughout your campaign, and it will replace it throughout your whole campaign.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's a feature that I like the most personally.
You know what? It would actually, even if you do a lot of export, for example, if you advertise, for example, in Dutch or in French, and you know, Dutch is spoken in Belgium and in the Netherlands, but we have a slightly different vocabulary.
True.
It's a good way to do a variation. Same thing for French.
Definitely.
That would be a good use case as well.
Yeah, definitely for accents within a country or within a region. That's definitely a very good idea. So how do you set this up? There's a very simple way to do this. You do it in the drafts and experiments tab, where you also do your normal experiments, and you select the campaign, of course, that you want to test. You can either say a certain campaign, or you can select all the campaigns as you saw before. And then there's several options. I think there's 3 options that you can use to test the variations. The first one is find and replace. As I said before, you can replace certain phrases throughout your whole campaign that are that you can find in your ad texts. And you can replace that word with another word to test what the relative CTR will be. So, for example, in this example, they looked up every time that the word great was found in an ad, and they replaced the word great with fantastic and checked what the uplift was.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool. Another way that you can use the add variations tool is to check certain variations of headlines. So, for example, if you're promoting a popular brand, you want to use tasty chips. And then they wanted to test, they used tasty chips as a headline for one ad, and then they also wanted to test whether the tasty chips headline would work for all their ads. So they kind of wanted to test and check out different headlines. And the last one that you can use is to just simply swap headlines. So let's say you have an ad which has headline 1 is great deals, headline 2 is tasty chips. Then you can swap the headlines, making headline 1 tasty chips and headline 2 great deals. And it's a really easy way to kind of make this A/B test throughout the whole account or the whole campaign. And afterwards, evaluate everything in bulk. So let's say you want to test for your whole account. What will happen if I switch my headline 1 and headline 2 for all my ad text? And then afterwards you can get a really easy evaluation report.
Absolutely. I think this is also just about eliminating guesswork. I think we get a lot of questions about quality scores and CTRs and what will work better or not. Test it out. It will give you your data right away. So that's really cool.
True. And everything is testable in AdWords, so you never have to guess for anything indeed. So not half your marketing budget will be spent on
something you don't know.
On something you don't know, indeed, as we said before.
Don't winemaker.
Yes, exactly. So then how do you set up the test? That's the last step. You set a name, of course, you set a start date, and that is optional. I personally don't recommend it. I would just wait until you have a statistically significant difference. And the experiment split, I would usually say set it to 50%, which means that 50% will be 50% of the time variation A will be shown, and 50% of the time variation B will be shown. I think that's the most honest and most fair way to compare the two, of course. And then what I really like about the add variations tool is that it gives you really great reports to interpret the results. So you can see what the uplift has been for any metric that you would like to see it for. So CTR could be relevant, click-through rate, the amount of clicks, or even amount of conversions. And you can see that the statistically significant results will be marked with a star. So it's really easy and quick for you to see what the result has been. And so for an example, in this case, you can see that on the left-hand side of the print screen, you can see that the clicks increased with 10%, and that there was a confidence interval between 9 and 11%. So if you were about to go through with this new variation and implement it account-wide, then AdWords will give you an estimation that your CTR will increase, or sorry, the amount of clicks will increase roughly between 9 and 11%.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's quite a result, to be honest.
Exactly. And as you can see, you can do it for any metric. So next to it, you see impressions, CTR, cost, clicks, just like a normal experiment. And then in the end, you can, of course, apply it. There will be a setting where you can do that. So it's quite easy.
All right, nice.
All right.
So that's it for us. If you have any questions, you have about 10 more seconds to send them in. And for the rest,
I think we have no questions.
I think we have no question. I think that means that we were super clear and that you're keeping all of your questions for our last edition of the news bulletin before the summer, which is going to be in 2 weeks, where we will also be talking about audiences and a couple of more product updates. So we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Ciao.
Thank you.